Well, welcome to another episode of the Grazing Sheep Podcast. I'm your host, Big Tom Perkins, along with Dr. Cameron Meyerly. And today we're joined again by Dan Ulry of White Gate Fencing Supply. Did I get that right?
Yes.
There we go. So I went with Daniel and Brian Buck. We rode all the way out to Missouri. It took us 2.5 months, but we finally got there. And we had a good time at the Katahdin Expo in Mexico, Missouri. So now I can say I've been to Missouri and I've been to Mexico.
It's the double whammy.
A double whammy right there. I didn't drink the water, so I've stayed healthy. So
And
it's
Tom didn't even have to learn Spanish either.
I didn't even have to learn Spanish. I was so amazed how many people spoke English out there.
Right. Right. Nice. So you guys had a good trip out. How many hours of a road trip was it?
So I think it was like 9.5 hours on the GPS, but by the time you make a couple fuel stops and get some food, I think, we were about 11 and a half, 12 hours in the car
And
going
this
out
is
and coming
Expo
back.
number what for each of you?
This would be my third one.
Okay.
Same here.
Same. Nice.
Yep.
Nice. So what for you guys? Both are Katahdin breeders. What was the value, or why did you want to participate in the KHSI Expo this year, or in general?
For me, a lot of it was networking. I just enjoy talking to people. I know people find that odd because I'm usually so shy, but go around talking to people and just looking at what other people have for sheep.
Yeah, I kind of agree with Tom. The networking is always awesome. Get to see your friends that go to these sales. Each kind of sale and group is a little bit different on the crowd, and some breeders only go to a couple select sales. Some of them you'll see at all the different sales that we go to. So it's always good to see them, catch up, talk sheep. But I also was a member of the subcommittee for the sale, so I was kind of working behind the scenes, kind of similar to EAPK, helping get the sheep sorted and paint branded for the sale with the group, and setting up the mulch and shavings for the sale ring and the picture backdrop and just anything that kind of needed to be done. So it's always
And
always a good
for
time.
those that maybe haven't been to an expo, or raised a different breed of sheep, this is a very similar sale format to what we'd see in some more traditional type sales. So something like Midwest Stud Ram sale that also happens in Missouri, where we're actually taking sheep up onto an auction block and selling those live as those individual lots. Does that atmosphere? We talked a little bit on an EAPK follow up on the online aspect of it. A live sale, a lot of excitement. Sheep sold well.
I think that it kind of depends. The auctioneer dictates a lot of that excitement. And you got to have bidders that want to raise their hand, because you got to get multiple people going, where it's kind of that race to who can get their bid in. So there's a few sheep that sold pretty well. I know there was definitely some ewe lambs, in that top 10 that really garnered a lot of excitement and a lot of bids there going back and forth. So it is very similar to like the stud ram sale, and that we are bringing across the auction block. And one thing that's different about the expo format is we have a top 10 pick for rams and ewes. So all of the consigners get a card when they get there, and then you pick from your peers in the sale on which sheep you think are the top 10 in the sale, in no order or just random order. And then whoever has the most votes in their top 10, that ends up being the first animal to sell. So they sell the top 10, and then it goes by age after that. So it's kind of a compliment to be in the top 10, that your peers deemed your sheep to be one of the best 10 sheep there at the sale. So it's kind of interesting and fun way to kind of set the beginning of the sale order. And some of those other traditional ones will have a show along with the sale to help set the sale order, but I think that's it's kind of a fun, unique way to do it.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's definitely unique compared to our other show and sale format. Sheep events that we see around the country, and it is kind of fun to do a People's Choice Award of who's there and who's evaluating instead of selecting one individual that is going to determine sale order. And someone will, I'm sure there are plenty of people that still are still disgruntled and say, I don't know how, I don't know how this, individual or animal made it into this slot, but um, it's a group majority essentially.
Yeah.
So that's a fun way, I think, to evaluate animals by that group majority. And Tom, did you have any any difficulty selecting 10? Did they all look like they could go back and eat grass and work in Fombelle, PA?
Well, first of all, I wasn't a consigner, so I didn't have to do that chore. But I did.
Oh, it's only consigners that
Yes.
do the selection.
Yep. So
Okay.
Brian Buck had a ram there, and so him and I had kind of walked around before he filled out his card and kind of looked at things. And I remember thinking, I'd have trouble picking the top 10. There was a lot of good looking sheep there. So it was not the easiest thing to do.
That's kind of what I was curious about, is what your kind of methodology is in selection. And Daniel, you also did not consign this year, but in previous years, you'd consigned sheep. So talk us through a little bit on what your approach is to finding the one. Like, are you getting peer pressured? Someone pulling you off to the side and saying, "Hey, Daniel, what do you think of this one? I think he's pretty nice."
There's not too much of that that goes on. I don't think it's
Okay.
it's interesting though, because each person has different goals, and I think you guys have talked about this with sales before. Like, when somebody shows up and I want your best ram, it's like, well, what are your goals as a breeder?
Yep.
I would say this sale is more based on phenotype of the sheep, at the sale. There are some sheep with NSIP numbers that are there, and um, sheep with good numbers tend to sell a little bit better. It seems like I know you guys were talking about that recently on one of the other podcasts. I think Dr. Weaver was breaking down sheep with numbers versus sheep without, and how those were selling a little bit better if they had some data to back them up. So I think that's one thing that's interesting is taking your goals and looking at numbers, looking at the actual sheep in the pen there and what they look like on that sale day. It can take a little time to go through the barn and whittle down your notes. I know there was a few nights that it was 11 o'clock at night, and I'm still in the barn sorting through, trying to figure out what I like, and taking that into consideration. So it is a bit of a challenge sometimes, especially there was 200 sheep that were at the sale and consigned there. So it's not like it's a small number you're trying to sort through. It's a big number, and takes some time to get through the pins.
Yeah, and one of the biggest aspects or benefits to the expo is the educational content. And so yes, it's a place you can go and find sheep to purchase, but it's kind of set itself apart from a lot of other breed organizations from an educational content. They utilize that as kind of their annual symposium and an opportunity to sell sheep and educate at the same time. And a very nice lineup of speakers. So I'm going to start with, what was your favorite session you sat through? And then we can work our way through all of the other sessions and kind of what you pulled out of each of those. So for you guys in the educational stuff, what was kind of the peak or the pinnacle of what you pulled out?
The one I liked the best was they had a whole session on how to take pictures of your sheep. And I kind of laugh because you'll see some of these on Facebook, and there's a pile of junk behind them, and an old barrel laid over on its side and stuff like that. And that was one of the things they talked about. And so they asked, what should your background look like? And my first thought was, you get all your fancy everything that you own, and you just set it up behind the sheep so that people can covet how nice your machinery looks. instead of just all the junk that's behind it. But no, but they talked about having try to put your nicest gates behind those sheep. And one of the things that I never thought about was I always see some of these guys, every one of their sheep are always standing uphill. And it never dawned on me that if you set your basically like an arena up where you want to take pictures of your sheep, if you set that on a bit of a hill, you can get your sheep facing uphill. And I'd never thought of that before. And being here in Western Pennsylvania, we have lots of hills. That wouldn't be that hard to set up.
Yeah, I think that was a great session. Brenton Francis from Francis Family Katahdins put that on, and that was kind of one of the things that I had recommended, as part of the committee last year. That Katahdins, we're seeing a lot more online sales, and you see a lot of marketing on Facebook, and we see a ton of terrible pictures. And you can make yourself $1,000 or lose yourself $1,000 on a good or a bad picture of an animal if you're selling in one of these online sales. Or even like the Expo, there is an online format that people can call in and or get online and bid from being remote. So there is value to good marketing of your animals, and I think that's something that there's not a lot of classes and stuff out there that'll teach you to do that. And we have a few breeders in the breed that do a really good job of marketing their sheep and taking a lot of good pictures. And so appreciate Britton sharing a lot of his tips and tricks on how to get a good picture, and what they do. And they're spending a whole weekend picturing 40 to 50 head of sheep, which sounds very miserable to me on the washing and preparation for that. But I thought that was a good session. There was also one about responding to birthing problems. Dr. Holly was very entertaining during that. And I think, as far as giving a talk in front of the group for stuff like that, I know here in Ohio, there's a group that goes around that has coolers that, have the fake uterus and everything inside, and actually has gotten hip bones from a butcher shop, and they'll put stuffed lambs in the positions and you can work with it. But I felt like this was a really good talk on how to go in and work through some of these issues without being hands-on. I felt like it was a good presentation. There's quite a few other good talks as well. Dr. Tom Murphy gave a talk that was supposed to be on udder health, but it ended up being more of a talk on mastitis and kind of OPP, and how our genomic testing and OPP resistance is kind of showing some value at seeking out those TMM11 sheep, and how they're not fully resistant, but really are kind of resisting that disease, and how by selecting for that, we can really lower the incidence of OPP in the flock through some of the research they did. One other thing that, outside of the educational stuff, the food was phenomenal. We had lamb in every single meal that they had.
Yep.
And I think the catering and the food was tremendous this year.
Yeah, the first night was tacos,
Awesome.
which didn't surprise me because we were in Mexico.
Right. Yep, that tracks.
So, but yeah, everything was delicious. It really was. There was Dr. Burt Moore did a session on confirmation, and there were definitely some things in there that I hadn't thought of before, and a lot of the obvious. But it was funny as the sheep were coming in and being sold there at the auction, I kept trying to use those lines that I saw in some of his presentations, and trying to look at those and seeing which had the better confirmation based on those lines that he had used. So that was definitely interesting. There was a lot of good information there. Did you go to the how to start an NSIP flock, Daniel, or did you go to the confirmation?
I did go to the how to start an NSIP flock. So Lynn Farmeyer, who is a fellow Katahdin breeder, and actually I believe he's maybe president of NSIP or something on the board of directors there. He's fairly high up right now. Gave a talk on kind of how to start an NSIP.
Yeah, I think he's a past president.
Past, okay.
Yeah.
But very knowledgeable and a great resource for anybody that's looking to get into that. And he's given kind of NSIP 101 class in the past, so this was more of a 001 class. He was trying to get down to the basic level, kind of explain some of the traits and the minimum stuff that flocks have to do. It wasn't so much a strategy of you want to join NSIP, these are the things you need to do. It was more of an explanation of, this is what NSIP is at its base level. And then as people got answering some questions or asking some questions, he went into a little more detail, but tried to keep it as simple as possible. And it was a very well attended session. They had quite a few people in there. I think there's good interest in data collection and seeing how that can benefit a flock.
Yeah, and it would be difficult, with two people, a lot of concurrent sessions, and it's sessions that were all over the place in terms of just topics covered. So, looking through the list of educational programming, like you just mentioned, that how to start an NSIP flock, the confirmation, reproductive management, marketing on social media. I did want to touch on, for those that maybe think that, because initial just response to a session on like, oh, how to picture sheep seems silly. In the whole scheme of sheep production, is that something that's important? I think it ties directly into marketing and how we're selling those sheep. And so again, that face value, you're like, oh man, I don't know if that's really worth, putting on the agenda. But when we look at representing accurately representing sheep that we're selling in a virtual format, I think it's something, first of all, that's very important. Secondly, if we're a new producer or someone that's had sheep for forever and wants to pursue, an online sale to expand their marketing, um, if you don't know if you don't know what you're doing, taking those pictures, um, as you mentioned, Daniel, that sale is not going to go well. And certainly, as you mentioned, a lot of sheep people that know what they're doing in that regard. But for anybody that's listening that maybe has interest in it, um, I always go back to there's a number of goat producers. They tend to be more show goat, weather type goat producers. Um, the one family down in Texas, I think it's Pfeiffer's, that always have a doe sale, and all the things that you talked about, Tom, those were things that you try to make sure in that picturing process. And I know I made the comment to you, it's like you have to do more than just throw up the hog panel in the back and run them around.
Yeah.
Put them on a blocking stand, show stand, and take a picture from two two different angles. So yeah, I think that one would have been very interesting. Did either of you listen to I believe it was Dr. Brown from Missouri on the drought management items that he talked about?
Yeah, I think we were both in on that. I think Friday night that was the session, or not Friday night, but whatever night that was. Maybe it was Friday night.
I believe
That was
Thursday night, maybe.
Thursday night. Yeah, that was
Thursday night.
yeah, that was a session, and that was it was pretty interesting. I don't think I learned anything new, mostly because I had read the Drought Resilient Farm by I can't think of the guy's name now, but it was a book, and a lot of the same information was in there. But he talked about the fact that if things get really bad, you can always cut down some small trees and let them eat those leaves and some of that brush and so on. And I think a lot of people kind of forget about that kind of stuff. It's a good time to clean up fence rows if you're
Right. Right.
drought. And he talks about some C4 plants, to plant, during the summer months when things are going to be dry because the respiration is different in those plants, and so therefore they could grow in those drier conditions and so on.
Yeah, as long as those plants don't get drought stressed, and then we run
Right.
into
Yeah.
prussic acid
You, there could
problems.
be issues with those as well.
Right.
The
So, and then
the other thing that they did this year that in the previous two that I've gone to, they didn't do was they ran these concurrent sessions that were all hands-on sessions, and each
Mm,
session lasted about 20 or 25 minutes, and then you had 5 minutes to go to the next one. But the hands-on sessions were taking the good pictures, how to draw blood. Dr. Chris Fletcher was there for that. And then the ram breeding soundness exam, and that was Dr. Holly Schramm. And then one on hoof care, Dr. Celeste Morris. And I thought all those were really good. Um, especially the
did you
blood
attend
draw,
the
especially the
did you
blood
attend
draw.
the
You hear
breeding
a lot of
soundness
people
exam?
talking about. You hear a lot of people talking about. We talk about drawing blood all the time, and Cam, you showed me, I don't know, several years ago how to draw blood, and now it's kind of it's not a hard thing to do at all, but unless you've seen it done and are able to do some yourself, it seems like a daunting task. And so I think they all did a really good job of that. I went to look at the hoof care just because well, one time I sent a ram to you and we trimmed its hooves before we sent it. And I asked you how the ram was doing, and you said, good. Yeah, we got it out and we trimmed its hooves right away. And I'm like, we just trimmed them. So I started thinking, maybe we're not doing a good job when we go to trim hooves. So maybe I better go look at this. And and I don't know. I think you were just more particular than I was because this gal was trimming pretty much the same way we trimmed. So
Nice. Nice. Yet on the ram breeding soundness exam, were you able to attend that?
I didn't go to that one. I got busy talking to somebody and didn't make it over to that. But it was four of them all going on at the same time. You just literally went from one, to the other. They weren't like consecutive. And I thought that was a pretty good thing. That way it kept the classes a little smaller, so you could do a little hands-on if you needed to, that kind of a thing.
Nice. I was just curious, that's something trying to pull some applicable information out of this. If we're looking to put rams in here in the next month, 2 months, we probably need to be getting on those breeding soundness exams and evaluating semen quality and uh, finding out, if we've got especially our ram lambs, if we've got a ram lamb that we'd like to use um, on a few sheep or on more sheep than maybe what he wants to handle. Those ram lambs, finding out when they're fertile and um, just evaluating those so we can make breeding decisions and try to get sheep healthy. And we had a ram blackface sheep a while ago that um, during that breeding soundness exam had a lot of white blood cell, other items in that semen sample that we were able to treat for 45 days out from breeding and turn him in with ewes and then actually get lambs early in that breeding season or early in the lambing season versus allowing that systemic issue to go any longer and end up with lambs spread out over a longer period of time or come back 30 days later when we start to see all of the third round remarks
Yep.
and say we might need to reevaluate our ram situation. So yeah, that's something to not underestimate um and to get on. I know it can be kind of inconvenient, but it's very important.
Yep. So we're kind of running out of time here. Daniel, what was the high selling ram and what was the high selling you? I know you took notes on that.
So the high selling ram, from what I can see, was from Stuart Zimmerman Farm. There, Missouri, was $1,750. Um, and then on the ewes, I believe there was let's see here. We had $2,500 for Buckeye Acres. We had a 2,600 from Prairie Lane Farms. I know that Grandpa's farm had a $2,800 fall ewe lamb. That one was the high seller there.
Yeah.
So, and she wasn't even one that was selected in the top 10. So that's kind of the other thing that's always fun, is to see, whether the buyers agree with the consigners on which sheep that they like the best and are willing to spend the money on. So, and that was pretty special ewe lamb. So.
Yep.
Cool. So for $1,700, you could add the high seller out of Expo
Well, 1,700
on the Ram side.
You would have had 750. So if you wanted to go bad, because somebody else wanted it for 17. That's the way it works.
Right. Right.
There were definitely some buys on some good Rams out of the sale, and I think there was also some buys on the ewe lambs as well. I feel like each year you kind of compare sales to the years past, and I felt like the quality of sheep this year, of really going to Sedalia, going to EAPK, and then now out here to Expo, the quality of sheep I think is better this year than what we have seen in some of the years past, top to bottom of these sales. I especially think more at the bottom end of the sale, there was a lot of good sheep, and Tom can attest to this. I just moved back out of the dog house and back into the house after bringing a few more ewe lambs home with us. So I had to spend some time out there. The wife wasn't overly thrilled that we acquired a few more ewes for the program here, but felt like there was too much value to pass up on some of these ewes, and give them a chance in the flock, and at the prices that some of them were going for. They could go into a commercial type operation and still be able to make some money. And I think that there's some breeding pieces, and the fact that we can tie them back to sires that are out of NSIP programs kind of allows us to tie that back into the breeding flock here.
Yeah, there was a pile of good ewe lambs that did not bring a lot of money, and there was definitely a lot of value in those sheep. We started calling Dan Dollar Dan, because he was buying some nice sheep that were cheap. And on the way home, he said his wife was not going to be very happy with him. And I said that I would help him as much as I could, but if it went south, I was going to change sides and say, "Yes, Daniel, I told you shouldn't have bought those." And
Nice.
it wasn't very long
And
into the conversation that I changed sides.
I don't even think Marta got out a first word before Tom had changed sides. He
The look on her face, you could tell she was not happy. So I was thinking, I have to sleep there tonight, so I better change sides. So, but
And Tom even bid on the first one for me. So
I did. I did.
I tried to use that as my line, and she wasn't buying it. So
Daniel was helping somebody in this sale room, and he said, "Buy this sheep." And he handed me his number, so I bought the sheep. But technically, I bought one. I just didn't have to pay for it. So, and then we brought a load of sheep. Where did we end up taking that load of sheep?
there was a farm over outside of Springfield, Illinois, that had bought some ewes remotely online, and we rerouted our trip home to drop those off and meet up with them. So ended up getting up. We left very early on Sunday morning, which I'm glad that we kind of got a good night's sleep to hit the road rested instead of trying to make the long drive. And so that worked out well to meet up with them there first thing in the morning, get those sheep dropped off, and then truck the rest of the way back to Ohio.
So the whole trip was a lot of fun. I got to take a lot of naps. That was a good thing. And they teased me the entire time about taking my naps. And I couldn't help it. We'd just be riding along, and all of a sudden I just opened my eyes and there's a whole different conversation going on. So, but it was a lot of fun. And then I ran into another podcaster out there while we were there. And what ensued after will be known forever as the Podcast Wars. So we had a lot of fun. That was Matt Nolt. And what's the name of their podcast, Daniel? Because nobody's ever heard of it.
It's the Profitable Sheep and Goat podcast, and Tom and Matt were definitely. It was a fun conversation, just to hear and kind of compare notes on what they were doing. But they like to get their little jabs in at one another, here and there, and so it was comical for both of us because they're over there in Pennsylvania and have quite a large Amish following, it sounds like, and they have a system where they can call in and listen on the phone. So, Tom was talking about you guys being the #2 sheep podcast in the world, and Matt said that that they are probably the #1 Amish listened to sheep podcast in the world. So Tom's got to get on the horn and figure that one out.
Yeah.
Also, to back up a
Untapped
second,
market.
that drought resistant or drought resilient farm, that's Dale Strickler that wrote that
That's
book,
right.
Tom.
Yep.
So for anybody that is wanting to look at that, Dale Strickler is the author of that book.
That's a really good book. Yep. I couldn't remember his name. But we had a lot of fun with the Podcast Wars. There was, I don't know, 10 or 15 people standing around listening to our Podcast Wars. We probably should have recorded that because it was really funny. We did have a lot of fun. Nobody walked away with hard feelings or anything like that. So it was definitely good. In fact, Leon Gaiman, he's the host, one of the hosts of that. He had contacted me, I don't know, about a month ago now, and he was having some issues, and I helped him through with those. So if it really was a war, I would not have helped him at all. But but he's a good guy, and Matt's a good guy. So we had a lot of fun with that. So
Yep. Fellow Katahdin breeders.
fellow Katahdin breeders, and that kind of seems to be the thing in the Katahdin world. People have no issues with helping each other out. So
Yeah. Tom
that's
kept saying he was looking for the mean Katahdin breeders out there, and I don't think he ever met any mean breeders yet. So he's still looking for them. So
I'm still looking.
if anybody
Yep.
knows where they're at, we can
Yep.
help guide Tom that way. But so far, he's just been meeting all the friendly ones.
Yep, that's pretty much it. So we're coming up on our time. It's been good catching up with you guys. Do remember that there's a Facebook group and a YouTube channel, so you can go check those out. If you got any questions or comments, you can email me directly at bigtomperkins@gmail.com. Daniel, you got I know you've got an email there with your fencing company and maybe a phone number, whatever you'd like to put out there.
Yeah, I was gonna say we're on Facebook, White Gates Fencing Supply, and then our farm name is Ulry Farms. We've got a website, ulryfarms.com. My contact information should be on both of those pages. So if we need help with some timeless fence products, we can do that, or you just want to talk sheep.
All right. Well, it sounds good. So, like I said, it's been fun catching up with you guys. It was a good trip out there to Expo. Kind of looking forward to next year. And so we'll talk to you guys later.
Sounds good. Thanks, guys.
Have a good one, Tom.
All right. Bye.